Welcome to Covenant of Justice. I'm attorney Isaiah Jerez, and every other week we sit down with remarkable individuals of Southern Nevada who make this such a wonderful place to live. Together, we explore a wide range of topics that matter to the people of Las Vegas and beyond, offering a glimpse behind the glamour of the Strip to showcase the real stories, experiences, and voices that shape our community. This is Isaiah Jerez with Covenant of Justice. Today, we're happy to have Alan Snel. He's an author, journalist, publisher, and avid cyclist. Alan, thanks for coming in. I'm so excited to have you here. So, we're going to talk a little bit about your journey coming back to Vegas, but, what you do here in Vegas is pretty exciting, right? Because you focus on the construction of those amazing stadiums that we're putting up, right?
Yeah, this is kind of like the golden age, really, of sports development here in this Vegas market. For so long, the governments were not willing to publicly subsidize the construction of stadiums. And then when the opportunity came for the Raiders to move to Las Vegas, the dam burst because then it was all the chips went to the center of the table, and you had, a fairly big contribution, $750 million of public money to help the Raiders build their stadium. The LVCVA, which, as you know, the Las Vegas Convention and Vision Authority, they spend tens of millions of dollars on trying to get sports events, and the A's got their legislation passed in 2023, and they're like 8 months into this 31-month build cycle to have a stadium. If you go down there, the A Stadium, like bottom concourse, is like taking shape. You can actually see like a baseball stadium bowl now. So that's my little specialty, covering the business and politics of the stadium industry. I kind of take kind of a city hall reporter approach to covering these sometimes complicated and very sometimes controversial and heated topics of subsidized public-private stadiums.
Yeah, right. As a parent, right, who wants to see another stadium going up when our schools are failing, right? Our schools are at the bottom of the dregs
And there's all
across
these
the
other
United States.
public needs as well.
Yeah, right. I mean, mental health is a huge issue here. But then,
Yeah.
you brought up Las Vegas Raiders Stadium, and I thought I saw a post like it's one of the most profitable stadiums in the U.S.
Right. So it is a pretty busy place. The question about the revenues generated is basically who gets the money and how is it used. Obviously, the Raiders manage the stadium and they rent the stadium, so they're doing pretty well. Obviously, the hotels do well because a lot of the tourists who come in are using the stadium. The interesting thing about that combination is that there is a hotel room tax that was designated to generate the money needed to pay back our public debt on that stadium. So, you're talking about 8 or 9 regular season Raider games, a preseason game. UNLV football is there for 6 home games, so that's 15, 16 uses out of the season. And then you have your various concerts as well. An occasional soccer, kind of a friendly soccer game. Only a week or two you had the Australian Rugby League. They were here a week ago last Saturday. So Las Vegas definitely needed a world-class stadium to compete against the Orlandos and the LAs and the Anaheims in terms of the tourist dollars. So the stadium was definitely crucial. Like any other deal, it comes down to how much does the public pay, and and who benefits. So.
Yeah, and going back to who benefits, I mean, even these sports industries are benefiting because you have world-class stadium right around world-class resorts that are just within 10, 15 minutes of getting to the stadium.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Raiders did a good job at piecing together the properties and the site. I mean, by most standards, the site itself is kind of small. I mean, they have on-site parking, I think, for about 2,400 or 2,500 or 2,600 cars. So, it's Las Vegas. Las Vegas is not known for its infrastructure, and it's kind of like, I guess you're on your own to try to get there. In terms of reaching it. I think one of the great deals actually for the Raiders football games is the RTC bus. It's a special shuttle bus that costs only $2 one way back and forth. So that's $4 round trip.
Mhm.
and the RTC shuttle bus will pick you up at, they're in Henderson. They'll pick you up in Summerlin, and they pick you up, at the Red Rock Hotel or Green Valley or several other locations around the Vegas Valley. For $4, that's a
Mhm.
great deal. So, you
Mhm.
know, depending on where you are, where you're from in the United States, you're kind of used to taking like trains or buses to sports games anyway.
Mhm.
So Las Vegas is very car centric and very car oriented. So people want to drive, but like you said, it's surrounded by a whole satellite of hotels, and a lot of people will park in the MGM hotel properties. Like
Yeah.
Mandalay Bay across the interstate. So a lot of people are parking down there, or the other MGM hotels, and then walking across Hacienda, which is closed. I love to see Hacienda closed. It's like,
Huh.
to me, it's great to see this a road that's open to pedestrians. And I bike. I park
Mhm.
nearby, and then I bicycle over to the game.
Hmm. Yeah, it's pretty good riding your bike over there. And the few times that I've been down there, getting in and out of the stadium is actually relatively quick, right?
I think
It's
they definitely had to work out some wrinkles when the place opened, but
Mhm.
people are coming from different directions and using different modes, so I think that's helpful.
Yeah. And so now looking forward with the baseball stadium, this is a relatively small baseball stadium though for the
Right.
major leagues,
So you
right?
have 30,000 fixed seats along with
Hmm.
3,000 standing room only, tickets available. So the capacity will be 33,000. Of the 30,000 seats, probably about in the 6,000 range will be quote unquote premium seats. And so about 20% of the seats will be premium. And the A's are right now trying to sign people up to commit to the chance to buy tickets. What's interesting about the premium seats is that there is a required personal seat license, which is a fee that you have to pay to get the right to buy the premium ticket. For the Raiders stadium, for the football stadium, you had to pay a PSL just to buy any season ticket. So, what's interesting is that the construction budget of the Raiders stadium was $1.4 billion. That was the construction. It was $600 million in other costs, which is why you hear the $2 billion project cost. But the actual construction cost $1.4 billion. The Raiders raised $549 million in personal seat license revenue.
Hmm.
So they were, the PSL was a key moneymaker for the Raiders to help pay for their share of the construction.
Hmm.
And what's interesting is that the president of the Raiders at the time was Mark Bedane. He has since become the president of the A's. So he's in the unique position of overseeing the opening of the Raiders Stadium, which was 2020. And now, as you know, the A's are scheduled to open their stadium in 2028. And Mark Bedane, this guy who, grew up in the Raiders organization, he can say he was the president of two major league teams that opened up two separate stadiums only a mile or two from each other, in the Strip corridor, which
Hmm.
is pretty interesting.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Vegas likes to do things big, but yet the baseball stadium, the capacity is
It's
smaller. It's
small.
like,
It's also on a footprint of only 9 acres. That corner,
Mhm.
the southeast corner of Las Vegas Boulevard and Tropicana Avenue, which is, as you know, it's where the Tropicana Hotel Casino used to
Mhm.
be. Uh, they are restricted to only 9 of the 35 acres. So the footprint's going to be the smallest stadium footprint in the majors. I think the Minnesota Twin
Mhm.
Stadium might be very small too at 9 acres. But and what's key about the 9 acres is that is the tax increment financing special entertainment district. The public is contributing $380 million worth of value, tax credits, bonds, what have you. Clark County is contributing, I believe, like 145 million or 150 million in bonds, along with $25 million in infrastructure improvements for that site. And the county plans to pay off its debt by collecting money that's sold on like 17 different items in that 9 acre tax district, which is, they have a goofy, fancy name, tax increment financing, this TIF thing that,
Huh.
it's not uncommon to see that in other areas. But,
Mhm.
you as a Clark County resident, we're all hopeful that there will be enough money to be raised. So, to pay off our public debt. In fact, on the Raider Stadium, we're still paying off more than $1 billion on debt on the $750 million. People hear the $750 million figure. People have, what they're not told is that it's like a mortgage. I mean, you have to pay the debt on the $750 million on the bonds. So we're still, the public's still $1 billion in debt paying back, and they're collecting the hotel room tax. What's interesting between the two stadiums is that one is being financed publicly with the hotel room tax fee. The other is kind of tax credits and the Clark County with the bonds. So
what does the amortization schedule look like to get paid back that $1 billion?
So it's like or we got the old 30-year deal for the Raider Stadium. I think it'll probably be also 30 years for the Clark County bonds. I'm almost positive 30 years. I might be wrong, but it's like, I guess it's like paying off your mortgage, I suppose.
Yeah, but kind of what you're alluding to, right, is bringing in these sports. I mean, we're opening ourselves up to more tourists, right? There's a bigger reason to come
What's interesting
here.
about the legislation that designated the public money in both stadiums, the word tourism actually is in the name of the bill. I don't know the name, but the tourism is actually in the names of the bill, and that's how they were able to politically justify getting those bills approved at the state.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit why you came back to Vegas, because you were here originally in Vegas working for the RJ, right? You were a sports editor working with the RJ?
I was a business reporter covering the business of sports and stadiums out of the business section. That was my forte. I worked at the Denver Post and papers in Seattle and South Florida, Tampa, on that specific beat, covering the business and politics of publicly financed stadiums. And I worked at the RJ from 2012 to 2016, left to move back to Florida for 1 year, and then a car smashed into me from behind. And while I was recuperating, I had a really good friend from the Denver Post come. He was visiting his in-laws at the time. He said, you covered this topic in Las Vegas for 4 years. Go back, create your own website, and just do your thing. And I said, yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And in June, just in a few months, I'm going to be lvsportsbiz.com. We'll be celebrating 9 years, which is, that's like 133 years. And like a website that's like 9 years old is kind of pretty old. I was going to say it's 133 years in like regular years, but we're celebrating our 9th year in June, in first week of June.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thanks.
But I mean, you started this at a really tough time in your life, because like you're saying, you got hit from behind by a car while you're on your bicycle.
Yeah, in fact, my first book, Long Road Back to Las Vegas, which is on Amazon, I really go into detail about how lvsportsbiz.com was almost like it was like a life raft for me to give my life some purpose. And you don't really just like get over things, but you find a way to move forward. And it gave me kind of a roadmap to move forward. And launching the site, throwing myself back into, that, if you recall, it was the same time when the Golden Knights were launched. In fact, the team was picked during the expansion draft, literally 2 weeks after I showed up, and the Raiders Stadium was being built. So the launch of the Golden Knights, the construction of the stadium, that was like stories 1 and 1A in terms of, and then there's all these other things, the launch of the Las Vegas Aces, MGM Resorts bought the Aces out of San Antonio, and good old Brett Lashbrook started the Las Vegas Lights in downtown Las Vegas, and then F1 comes on the scene, and then we're getting Super Bowls and Final Four. So I mean, there was a ton of stuff to write about. This week, in fact, this is early March. The college basketball universe, takes over Las Vegas, Mountain West and West Coast and Big West. And so anyway, there's so much stuff to cover. And I found that, alluding to your point about the crash, the site really allowed me to mentally and psychologically and emotionally move forward. It's 9 years, you find your way forward. And now I kind of specialize in looking at just the public expenditures on all these on the stadiums. I cover the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority very closely, the LVCVA. They meet their board meets the second Tuesday of every month. So tomorrow at 9 a.m. I carefully look at their agenda and see what what money they might be spending on sports stuff. I don't take a pro or con position. I just think it's important for the public to know that this is the money and resources being spent on these sports events. And the reason is this. I feel like I try to connect the dots. And you brought up the point about, schools or healthcare. Our elected officials decide what our public resources are spent on. And, we have to decide, what kind of community do we want? I mean, we definitely need more doctors. We need more healthcare professionals. The school stuff is very well documented. And as you know, the road safety is tough out there. I mean, we have minimal amount of paved trails and bike lanes that they are out there. They're just not formed into a usable network. If you go to other cities like Denver or Seattle, you will see their trails and their bike lanes. They form kind of a highway system for bicycles. We don't have that in Metro Vegas. Henderson has probably the best in the Metro Vegas area. Has the Union Pacific. It goes up to River Mountain. Loop Trail. I mean, you have trails leading into it, and Las Vegas needs that. And the thing about Las Vegas is that the Strip kind of runs by itself. It's like technically it's in Clark County. I call it Vatican City because it kind of
it's its own little state.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of
really
does what
is,
it wants to do.
Huh.
And you need like a paved trail. You need a paved, safe corridor from downtown to the Strip. If you think about it, the Strip is kind of like our job hub. And, more and more people I do notice are riding those scooters and the e-bikes and stuff. And they're getting, they're going to these, to their jobs at the hotels. Really, it's not the greatest bicycle experience in the Strip corridor. You got to be really careful.
Yeah, and the people that ride their bikes to their jobs on the Strip. I mean, these are good people. I had a client once who got hit on his bike riding to work, and he was a dishwasher. We had to file a lawsuit, and the insurance company, the attorney for the insurance company, is asking him, well, you start work at 5. Why are you riding your bike at 3:30 in the morning? And the guy couldn't fathom. He's like, well, I have to get there early because I want to get there on time, right? The people who are using this infrastructure, right, or lack of infrastructure to get to work. I mean, these are the backbone of our industry.
You raised a great point about, the lawyer for the insurance company. Like, people don't understand what it's like to ride a bicycle to get to places. Sometimes they'll think bicycling is all about health and fitness, which it is. That's one form of it. But to me, the bicycle is a really great transportation mode. It is to me, I've commuted everywhere. I've bicycled in New York City and Denver and Seattle and South Florida and Tampa. And it is, people forget that once you can drive to where you have to get to, but guess what? You got to park your car. And sometimes it can be very costly. It's kind of funny. But I was laughed. I actually, before I came here, I gave, I was a guest lecturer on the business of sports, and I brought up the bicycle issue for the lifelong learning program at UNLV. And they were talking to me about, well, we got to talk to you about your parking passes. And don't worry, I'm going to bicycle. And I just rolled the bike right into their building and put it right up against their wall. Is that simple? It could be that simple. It's unfortunate about Las Vegas. I cover LVCVA board meetings. I don't like to talk during public comments. At the end of the meeting, I have to go there, along with the other cast of characters who show up at these meetings, and I got to explain to the board that I bicycled to the convention center. You don't have really safe, visible bike racks. Today was simple. I can roll the bike right into the building. They would not allow me to roll the bike into the convention center meeting room. They have a new meeting room, which is kind of on the east side of their whole complex. And they have a bike rack. I said, you spent $1 billion on the West Hall. The West Hall is an impressive convention center. It's the whole expanded deal from 3 years ago. They have this tiny little bike. First of all, bike racks should be individual hoops or like a rectangle shape where you can lock the entire frame and wheels to it. It shouldn't be this kind of one-piece wavy thing that they have. And they have like one of these wavy bike racks at the West Hall, $1 billion public building. And they have this bike rack out by like the delivery depot area, in the back of the building. You can't even find it, and if there is, there's room for like 3 or 4 bikes at the most. Then they spent $600 million on their convention center on rehabbing it. And there's no bike racks in front of that too. They do have some bike racks on these little alleys and stuff. I got to tell you a horrible, horrible story. For an assignment, I went to the Sphere. The National Hockey League was having its draft in, I think it was June, or it was the summer of about 2 years ago. And I biked over. I locked my bike outside their fence. You know that the security came out, broke my locks, and took my bike at the Sphere. And they said, we don't like the look of it. That was their reason. And the head of security, I knew these people like took the bike when I came out of the building after I, did the assignment. The bike's gone. So I go to security, like, well, what's up with this? And their head security came out and said, and this is the quote, and I'm not exaggerating, it's not a good look. That is their quote. It's not a good look.
But a bunch of cars sitting in the parking lot is perfectly fine. But
this is the city we deal with, which I get really upset about.
But just the infrastructure. I mean, getting to the Strip on a bicycle, that's almost impossible unless you're...
You have to be experienced.
Yeah.
And like I said, I've urged the city of Las Vegas to work with Clark County to build a safe corridor from downtown to the Strip. And like you said, the Strip is 3-4 miles long. You should have multiple ways of getting there. You just don't have the bicycle awareness. I think I worked on, what's really important to know is that I actually quit newspapers at the Tampa Tribune in 2006, 20 years ago, left journalism. I created a coalition of bike shops, and I worked full time on bicycle safety issues, on bicycle awareness. I mean, 6.5 years of my life was spent on this very issue. And I found that it's easy to get frustrated because of the lack of infrastructure and awareness, but you have to take a step back and literally go through an education process to explain to people who don't, as you know, if they're not aware of bicycling, it's like a foreign world to them, and you have to explain that bicycling is a good thing for your community. It's another transportation mode. It doesn't have to be the only thing. I mean, for me, it works. It's a really viable option. And not only that, it's health. There's health benefits to it. You get another car off the road. And guess what? You want to economically develop your market. The people who are like the high-tech companies, they like bicycling. And they're not coming here. I mean, there's other issues, education, healthcare. But, if they don't feel there's a safe place to ride a bike, they probably won't move their company here. So there's other there's a wide variety of positive things that come with bicycling and investing in. I mean, comparing, building a bike trail compared to, widening a highway or building another bridge. I think it's a really good investment.
So 6.5 years dedicated to kind of building a network, focusing on bicycle safety. What then brought you back into journalism?
I thought like I did as much as I could during those 6.5 years. And I still had, that bug about covering, the business of stadiums. And the Review Journal needed that person. My contact was at the Review Journal was someone who I had worked with prior. It was an editor who I worked on at previous newspapers on this very topic. So it was time to say goodbye to Tampa, Florida. In 6.5 years, the group that we created was called Southwest Florida Bicycle United Dealers. It was SwiftBud. This is something only like West Florida people would know, but the water district was called Swift Mud. So we were Swift Bud.
Yeah.
Southwest Florida Bicycle United Dealers. Yeah. So that was just kind of a play on words for that. But I left in November 2012, and I worked right through to early 2016. And then I moved back to Florida to Vero Beach, and that a year later, that's when I got hit by the car. Came back in early June. In fact, I get a little emotional because actually only 2 days ago was the ninth anniversary of the crash. It was March 7th, 2017. So that was only 2 days ago. So when the day kind of rolls around, I usually figure out a way to just kind of acknowledge it. And the most important thing is I want to use it to raise awareness about the importance of safe roads and safe bicycle infrastructure.
Yeah, and you know, if I can dive into that a little bit more, because you talk about, okay, kind of LV Sports Biz was my life float, right? Kind of give me kind of some more purpose and drive in a different direction, right? Use your life for something that you're passionate about, but at the same time, you know, how can I use what happened to me to help other people understand what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. What's interesting is that even when you build the bicycle infrastructure, it has to be safe. I don't know if you ever bike up on the 215 trail in Summerlin, but the Summerlin, that 215 trail crosses Charleston at grade crossing, which is absolutely crazily dangerous. You have cars coming off the 215 and cars coming onto the 215, and you're trying to cross even when you get the right of way to cross the 215 on Charleston. You have to you have to be really careful of the turning cars. They're just coming on and off the highway. The at-grade crossing that Clark County is finally building a tunnel, which is you should have a tunnel or a bridge. Also, the 215 trail at Sahara and Flamingo, also at grade, on the road. Again, cars are coming off and on that highway. You got to be super high, and you should have a bridge. You should have. I mean, that's the nice thing. You're probably from the Henderson side, at least. There is. I think they just installed a bridge at St. Rose Parkway across on the 215 trail along in Henderson. There is a bridge that they just I think installed a year or two ago. There should be bridges on that 215 trail, crossing by the Green Valley District area. I mean, you have to kind of go up and around and come back to the trail. There's some other roads you have to be really careful. Even Eastern. I mean, you're going through you have to go through 6 different islands, concrete islands just across Eastern on the 215 trail. So even when they build trails around here, I mean, you're lucky you get a trail, and then they don't even, and that's not even built correctly. So I get kind of angry about it. I mean, I do contact the elected officials. Here's a great example. In Summerlin, there's Alta Drive, which is a main east-west road from Summerlin to downtown Las Vegas. And east of the Buffalo intersection, it's great because there's one lane of traffic going in each direction. There's some buffer space, the bike lane, and then parking space. But then when you go west of Buffalo, the city of Las Vegas has 2 lanes going in each direction instead of 1. So where are they going to get the space? They crammed in the bike lane all the way to the edge of the road. And get this, part of the bike lane includes the concrete gutter, which you should never have in a bike lane.
Which is not safe.
Which is not safe. You have the concrete gutter, and then as you know, there's a little lip or a little gap, and between that and the rest of the pavement, and that's part of the bike lane. That is not proper.
There's no 3 feet there.
And first of all, the width of the bike lane, I don't even think complies with standard bike lane width. Also, and these are things that drive me up a wall. I have contacted the city of Las Vegas. I actually did a ride from where I live, which included that particular stretch. I did videos while I was biking. A car whizzed by me within a foot or right on my left shoulder. There is that second passing lane. They didn't even use the second passing lane. As you know, in the state of Nevada, you are required to move over a lane, right?
Right. Yeah. If it's
and
there,
that was a violation of that. The driver also violated the 3-foot buffer. I mean, don't you think it's a shame that you have to have a law to tell a driver to pass a bicyclist by at least 3 feet. I mean,
and
it's sad that like you have to pass a law to do that. You
and I
know?
use this story, and I use it quite often. Like I was in Oklahoma this summer in some small little county, and some of you could you look on a map, it's full of rednecks or whatever. But I'm not joking. Every single car that came behind me gave me the entire lane, went all the way around. Every single car without fail. And here I am in a town, a large metro area, and hardly ever do I get that.
You know, it's kind of sad. I mean, this is all learned and taught behavior. You know, you can learn courtesy and respect of people who are vulnerable. You know, to me, I automatically give a pedestrian the right of way. I don't care what the protocol is for that specific setting. To me, it's automatic. The pedestrian gets the right of way. Period.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not here to bully them with like a car. I mean, I'm a bicyclist, but I'm also a motorist as well. You know, and all this is all
Mm-hmm.
learned behavior. Like you said, I mean, those
Mm-hmm.
people, they learn that the proper way is to be courteous and respectful of a bicyclist. So you give them a wide berth when passing.
Yeah.
Here in Las Vegas, I've bicycled across the country twice solo. I've lived in all these
Mm-hmm.
areas. I have drastically reduced the amount of time I bicycle on roads here. There is it's not, you do have, I don't want to make it sound like everything is bad.
Yeah.
There are certain sections where you have little pieces of infrastructure. They just don't connect into a comprehensive network. You can't get from A to B. And there's always that one little section that you get nervous about.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a great example. Biking up off the strip, you can take Hacienda Avenue. Hacienda has a bike lane. You can take it from Mandalay Bay and go west, and it goes all the way to Durango. But then you're trying to connect to the 215 trail to get to Summerlin. You have this break in the connection. You hit Durango. As you know, a lot of these roads are built like highways with basically traffic lights.
Yeah.
And so you hit Durango, you almost have to bike on the sidewalk because the cars are going so fast. You'd think like being in Oklahoma, they would go around you. They might not even move over here. So and then you bike to Tropicana, and then you have to make the left at Tropicana to pick up the start of the 215 trail. That takes you up to Summerlin, and there is that gap. And it's great that you have Hacienda as a decent road to bike on. You have the 215 trail, even with the crappy crossings.
Mm-hmm.
But you have that break, you have that section.
Mm-hmm.
It can be sometimes terrifying to be passed by cars zooming around at 50 miles an hour a foot from your left shoulder.
Yeah, right. And especially with the winds that we get, and who knows what's going to be in the roadway. And for me, there's a small little strip, and it's not even a half mile between my house and my work that doesn't have a bike lane. And that's what's on my mind. That's what stops me from riding my bike more frequently.
That is a great point.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about bicycling is that as much as you love bicycling, your mind is thinking about like the safety aspects of that particular ride. And if something like if the red flag goes up, like you're not doing the bike ride.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Just jump in the car, be a cager, and get here and be all aggro right after being in the car versus being more peaceful. So coming back to Vegas, right? I mean, are you planning to? I mean, you've built some good roots here, right? You've got your.
Yeah, I mean, there's sweat equity of 9 years in lvsportsbiz.com. I've kind of mentally committed to the opening of the A's Stadium, which is on schedule for 2028.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, life and business is a lot about relationships.
Yeah.
And I built a lot of those up in this market. So, you just don't throw away those kind of connections. So, it's 2026. I'm mentally, kind of on board at least through till the opening of the A's Stadium and in that first season at least. So, it's like anything else. I mean, you have a relationship with your city, and sometimes it's like relationships in general. It's a love-hate kind of thing where, but then again, I don't think like getting upset is a bad thing because it shows that you care. I mean, if you didn't care and if you were apathetic, it wouldn't
Mhm.
register with you emotionally, you know. And the fact that I still care to, like, the fact that you get upset shows at least you're like, you care a little about
At
it,
least you know what's going on, right?
Yeah.
There's
So,
yeah. Uh,
yeah, I'll be on board,
mhm.
definitely through 2028 for sure.
And then just kind of want to finish on this subject
Yeah,
because it's something that I love. So you say you've rode your bike across the country a couple of different
yeah.
times, and is
Yeah,
that
that was like I did that when I was in my 20s, when like you don't know
Mm.
better, And I
uh,
also wrote east to west. Most people bike west to east, but I
mhm,
bicycled from New York State west. The first time
mhm,
I went to San Francisco Bay Area, and then I bicycled down the coast to LA. And then the second time I went from New York, actually through Canada. You can kind of go through the state of New
mhm,
York into the province of Ontario, and then cut back into the states at
mhm,
Michigan at Sault Ste. Marie. And you're going through the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and then you hit, Wisconsin, Minnesota, North Dakota, you know, um, Idaho, Montana was kind of interesting because a lot of people take that US 2, which is you go through Glacier National Park, which is really beautiful. So I went through to
mhm,
Seattle, and then I biked from Seattle down to the San Francisco Bay Area. And this was 1989. I remember it very easily because I was bicycling and I had reached the Bay Area, and it was like late October, early November. And you remember the famous earthquake of
mhm,
1989. I was bicycling actually in the San Francisco, Oakland, Alameda area when the earthquake struck. So, and in 1989,
mhm,
that was the Bay World Series. The A's were playing the Giants in the World Series, and that's when the
mhm.
earthquake hit during the game. So, yeah, it was the second cross country trip was very memorable for sure.
Yeah. So maybe a third one
I don't
on the
know.
horizon.
uh,
Yeah.
I guess there's always a possibility, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your
Yeah,
story.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I really appreciate your
Hmm.
work, and I'm glad that
Hmm.
we need people in law who care about bicycle safety. As you know, there's
Hmm.
around the country there are lawyers who kind of specialize in it, and it's such an important topic. There's so many different aspects to it. Sometimes as the bicyclist, sometimes, it's almost like you're wrong. You have to prove you're not wrong sometimes. And like when
Yeah.
you're hit, sometimes like you're bicycling and like people think you're wrong just for being there. It's just
Yeah.
so I'm glad that you care about
Yeah.
the topic and it means a lot.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on.
Sure,
Appreciate it.
absolutely.
Yeah.